It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. My guest today is Daniel Barber, Vice President of Revenue at Node, N-O-D-E. Now, for anyone who's been reading about sales recently, there's been a sort of tsunami, if you will, of, in air quotes here, account-based categories or monikers are the same that are hitting sales, account-based marketing, account-based selling, and so on. And the focus, certainly is necessary and worthwhile, but in some respects, it's not really anything new. I mean, I started my career many years ago doing account-based selling, or what is now called account-based selling. We did account-based marketing, but it sort of fell out of fashion, like all good things, and what's old is new again. But what's really new are the tools that can help make your account-based marketing, your account-based selling much more effective and efficient than it was in the past. And Node is one of those companies that have introduced tools to help sellers in the account-based world. My guest today, Daniel Barber, VP of Revenue at Node, is here to talk about what they're doing to help boost sales productivity. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I definitely appreciate the intro and look forward to diving in around how there's a paradigm shift in the market. And definitely appreciate the intro.
Sure. So take a minute, introduce yourself. So how'd you get your start in sales?
Yeah, so I've had an unusual path to the lovely city of San Francisco through a couple of different venues. So I originally grew up in Australia and moved to the United States, to sort of partake in my tertiary education, and then spent some time in the Netherlands and in Germany, and then actually completed my MBA in Japan. I started to
working your way east all the time.
Exactly. And so completed my MBA in Japan and ended up working for a Japanese company. Who moved me to San Francisco to lead their business operations for the US business, which that role was sort of my first formal forte into running a business, but also sort of running a sales organization. And so running a $110 million business for the Japanese company.
Which firm?
So a company called Ishida. They do weighing and packaging equipment, so not something that many of the listeners may be familiar with, but $1 billion in revenue, so not a small organization by any means, but just not in an area that are generally familiar to folks. So courtesy of that, I was attracted to technology and the firms that existed in San Francisco, and moved to a company called Responsys in 2012. Many of you may be familiar with the acquisition of Responsys at the end of 2013. So I joined Responsys sort of in the growth stage between 80 and 200 million, and left the organization with a global team across several locations, and we exited just over $200 million with an acquisition through Oracle of $1.5 billion. Simultaneously, I became an advisor to a small company called Toutapp in 2013 with the founder TK. And so after the acquisition of Oracle, I joined as a very early employee at Toutapp and worked there to build out a sales organization that in 2014 I helped raise our Series B through Andreessen Horowitz and grew our revenue 300% in 2014. Expanded that in 2015 and then began to interact with Fallon Fatimi, who is the CEO and founder at Node. So I joined as an advisor in the end of 2015 and joined formally not too long ago towards the end of January.
So you're tracing out an interesting career path that for people who are listening that probably thinking, okay, every time he goes and joins a place as an advisor, he ends up working there.
I think there's definitely a theme. I think it's great when you can get exposed to a company and understand how the business operates and the problem that they're solving. And for me personally, I love solving problems. And when there's a problem that's big enough and that there are enough people faced with this problem on a daily basis, that's something that I want to be a part of.
Excellent. Okay, well, so let's talk about account-based intelligence, which is the stake in the ground put in the, or the stake that Node put in the ground. As I said in my open, I think we're sort of in this midst of this, and I have air quotes around the word account-based arms race. Start account-based marketing, account-based selling. At the Topo conference recently, talk about account-based everything. So you're jumping into the sort of account-based pool with a product that focuses on account-based intelligence. So what is account-based intelligence?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think you're spot on. Craig Rosenberg and I. So Craig is at Topo there. He and I are very aligned that in reality, everything is account based, right? So if you think about the traditional enterprise sellers of decades ago, things haven't changed a lot for them. They've always had an account based model. They've always had a set of companies that they're contacting. Technology has just allowed that sort of set of companies to expand to organizations that are selling in the mid-market and SMB space. So essentially move down market to mid-market and SMB. And then that's led to this proliferation of sort of specialization of account-based, which you described. So this accounts-based marketing and accounts-based sales development and accounts-based sales. But in reality, the foundation of the house, if you will, is built on data, right? And so the organization, whether it's sales or marketing, needs to intelligently think about how they can source their customer data and find the right accounts with the right people at the right time and deliver the right message. And that sort of stream requires an intelligent organization and data at the core of that organization. So I would sort of suggest that accounts-based intelligence underpins every other, accounts-based piece within the function of sales and marketing.
Okay. I mean, you had a line there, which, we could translate to be sort of the holy grail of sales, right? Talking to the right customers at the right time with the right message. So how are you? Lots of people have talked about that in the past. So you talk about a paradigm shift in terms of how you're handling that. What is that paradigm shift, and how's this actually going to work for sellers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think you're 100% right. The organization I formerly worked for, Responsus, we used very similar terminology of trying to find the right customer at the right time with the right message. That relationship marketing, which is something that I've been involved with for coming up 7 years here, is an area that for the B2C organizations, so companies that are serving organizations that are serving consumers, that area of marketing has sort of led the way, and now B2B organizations are starting to follow suit. And so the thing is, though, if you really break it down, it's really quite a difficult problem to solve in the business to business sort of world. And the reason why is because that information is not readily available on the internet. It is from a standpoint of if you know where to find it, which is why in reality it's actually more of a search problem than it is a data problem. And what I mean by that is if you're looking for a technology platform to solve a problem and you put that information into the search box, that's really too late, right? So if you were looking for someone to solve a problem for you and you go to the search box, you probably developed that problem and come to the realization that you have that problem, and then that's why you actually use Google search. But by that point, it's already too late. You already know that that's a problem, and you've formed some type of opinion of the type of company you would like to have solved that problem.
Well, so who's it too late for? The seller.
Correct, exactly. So, there are individuals looking for your platform. So for the sellers on this podcast, there are people looking for your platform or your technology or your widget all day, every day. And the downside is that it's a struggle as a B2B salesperson to try to find those individuals. Because in reality, you don't know when they're looking to solve the problem that you can solve. So at its core, it's a search problem. And that's why, I joined a team of people that are ex-Google engineers that worked on areas around search and spent a year building this platform. And that's why at its fundamental level, it's a search problem, not just a data problem.
Yeah, so it's really turning the tables. I mean, if we look at it from a B2C standpoint, and even B2B to some perspective, some degree, excuse me, is that consumers are searching for solutions for particular problems that they might have or achieve certain objectives, business to business somewhat. But what you're saying is we're going to really sort of turn that on its head and say, now we're going to empower salespeople with the ability to search for people who are searching for them.
Correct. And so this sort of movement towards predictive, and the term predictive in itself, in reality, that doesn't serve a lot of purpose for B2B, because if you think about organizations, especially organizations that are in enterprise sales, they may actually engage with and create less than 100 customers on an annualized basis. And so really, the idea of predictive is generally flawed. Statistically speaking, it's very hard to create predictive models when you have less than 100 successes over the course of a year. So, thinking about it more as a search problem, so providing a prescriptive method for recommending the right individuals, the right accounts, when is the right time. That's information that's very powerful to sales and marketing organizations, and that's the model that we're seeing as this paradigm shift.
So, yeah, I'm just sort of thinking through, how you are doing this. Well, I would presume that part of what you're doing is much like we see in sort of bits and pieces. People have solutions for tracking a customer's digital footprint through social media. You've got companies like Datanize that provide data about technology adoption and relinquishment, if you will, in terms of contract expiration and so on. So is what you're doing is sort of incorporating all those data points and more then to be able to say, okay, yeah, you can correlate individuals to certain actions in certain markets and then relate it to the salesperson?
Yeah, that's kind of the direction. I would say that what you described in terms of technology profilers. Broadly speaking, what we've seen is what you can kind of describe as data aggregation, right? So, there are companies out there that will sell a list of names or a list of companies or a list of technologies or a set of phone numbers, or a set of email addresses. And really, for a business, this is an obstacle course of trying to find the right mismatch, hodgepodge of technology point solutions to find a seamless way of actually just solving a simple question, which is, who is the next customer, right? If you're a business, really all you want to do is just work out who's your next customer. And so, consolidating those, but not just providing more information, because that in itself is not actually powerful, rather creating and distilling the context for the individual salesperson so that they actually know what to say to those right individuals at the right company at the right time. That's the part that's powerful, rather than just creating more information, because that alone does not create customers.
Okay, so that's what you're solving with Node.
Exactly.
So I'm sure people are curious, as am I. So how are you making that happen?
Yeah, so
In broad terms,
yeah,
we don't have an NDA signed, so just what you'd tell a customer.
Yeah, so the platform that we've built, we spent the last year building. We have a team of ex-Google engineers that were focused on search. We have an amazing sort of backing from investors like Mark Cuban, NEA, Canon Partners, Avalon, B Partners, helping us and sort of driving a greater vision of a platform that a platform that serves as a sales analyst, if you will, to serve up the right accounts, the right people, the right time, and the right message. And so that information becomes native in Salesforce for the sales rep, and so that becomes the tactical execution of the broader objectives set by the executive team, in sales and marketing.
Okay. You sort of danced around it a little bit.
I tried my best there.
All right, so we'll deal with sort of the fact of what the sales reps will have at the end of the day. So, but we're going to do that. We're going to take a quick break first, and we'll come back and we'll talk about that in terms of account-based intelligence and how Node is going to help really the dream of what I call the dream of personalization maybe actually become true when it comes to sort of sales development, selling, and so on. So anyway, I'll be back with my guest, Daniel Barber, VP of Revenue at Node, in just a second. Hi, this is Andy. Connect and Sell is used by sales reps at nearly 1,000 companies, including hundreds of technology startups and several Fortune 500 companies, to overcome the challenges of getting prospects on the phone. Companies using Connect and Sell grow their revenues faster by enabling their sales reps to have more sales conversations in 90 minutes than they could otherwise achieve in an entire week. Connect and Sell can be deployed directly to your sales reps, or you can take advantage of their outbound on-demand service, which delivers qualified prospect meetings scheduled directly on your sales reps' calendars. Visit connectandsell.com to learn more about how Connect and Sell can start filling your pipeline today. All right, we're back, and with my guest today, Daniel Barber from Node. We're talking about their new account-based intelligence tool. So do you have a name for this tool?
So it's the Node Sales Analyst, and it's a platform for sales and marketing organizations to find their next customer.
And this is a SaaS-based service?
Yes. Yep. We have a subscription platform that, we're an ISV partner of Salesforce, and so working very closely with Salesforce, to serve up native information that, people can run reports on and, power the information and in turn the context for the everyday sales rep to close more deals.
So how do you correlate what you do with the list? So everybody's got a list, right? So how's your data meshing with that?
In what sense of a list? So,
if you have a sales development team, they have a list of people account lists that they're calling, they're responsible for.
Yeah. So really what we sort of, start with is building what's been termed this sort of ideal customer profile, right? So this term has existed for the last couple of years, and I've written a couple posts, one with Max Altschuler on Mattermark's blog, actually talking about, how do you find what your ideal customer profile is, and how do you define what your total addressable market is? And so the first step in sort of our engagement with someone is, really let's look at what your ideal customer profile looks like. And so the Node platform will analyze the existing customers as well as looking at the addressable web. So, it's very nice to provide a mirror for someone to say, okay, this is what your customers look like, contact more of these. That's great, but it's, also more powerful to serve up who's your next customer. So everyone knows roughly what their customer looks like today, but what their customer looks like tomorrow is a very powerful conversation. And so we base the sort of model around your ideal customer profile and what that looks like over the evolution of the company and the product that you're trying to sell.
But what are the data points that dictate whether they are next?
Yeah, so, we look at a few different factors, one being the geography of where a company is based, another one being, of course, industry. And so those two...
geography in relation to your office, the seller's office, or geography in relation to what?
So geography in relation to the growth of revenue in a particular location. And so what I mean by that is if you think about the degrees of separation between individuals, if you're seeing a spike in interest in a particular area and you're seeing more deals closed in that area or an increased win rate in that area, that's usually a telltale sign that there are individuals communicating through word of mouth or some other forum in that particular location. And so, increasing the likelihood of success there, that'll actually happen if you focus your efforts both from a marketing and sales side in a particular location. common theory. Jeffrey Moore sort of talked about it in Crossing the Chasm, but applying that from a technology landscape means that it becomes actionable for the sales rep and the executive team. So geography, industry, same sort of theory, and of course, looking at different verticals within a particular industry. And then lastly, using technologies that have been installed and technologies that are used as a proxy for determining the right time to engage with an organization.
And tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so, there are a few different things that you can look at with technology. You can look at competitive technologies, obviously, to the product you're trying to sell, or complementary technologies. And so, looking at both becomes very meaningful because in an organization's development, they generally invest across multiple departments. And so as multiple departments invest in different technology solutions, they're solving a problem that's really defined in the maturity of that segment. So what do I mean by that? I mean, that's been carved out across different areas that are a little bit more developed. So if you look at marketing automation as one example, you have HubSpot serving the SMB segment. You have Pardot serving the SMB to mid-market segment. You have Marketo serving the mid-market segment. And then you have, Eloquire serving the enterprise segment. And generally, every organization has that same sort of method of selecting the right technology provider based on their development as an organization. So you can look for those companies as proxies to define the deal size that you potentially may close with companies that are using those technologies.
And it sounds like you use some assumption about what are allied technologies.
Yes, exactly.
So we can infer based on, and again, I presume similar to like you had a category for company. What's the category for companies like Datanyze that you used?
So you mean technology profilers?
Technology profilers, right. So you use some broader range perhaps of technology profilers or your own to say, okay, this is what's happening in an adjacent space that oftentimes indicate a future investment in this space that we're serving.
Exactly.
And so how's that presented to the sales rep?
So that information and all of the analysis that goes into that is presented to the executive team, and we sort of align on the focus of the organization, and then how that's powered for the sales rep. It's native within Salesforce. So what that means is you can run reports on that information, but it's also just exposed on every record. So if you're looking at an account, there's a prioritization of that account based on what I just described, as well as in a fashion that you could mention that on a phone call or embed it within an email, simply because it is native.
But what are you embedding in the email?
So the text of the company. So if you're referencing, let's say you're contacting companies that you've noticed if they use Marketo, perhaps Marketo is a good proxy for you. Then as a company, you could mention that let's say 30% of our customers use Marketo. So that information, you could embed that into a template, using ToutApp or using Outreach or using Yesware. And so any type of email or dialing platform, that information could be served up for the sales rep, in a fashion that suits them.
And then what about subsequent calls? And what are you doing in that regard in terms of helping them with, again, right messaging at the right time? Or is this purely on, top of the funnel type activities?
Yeah, so the other thing that we found is that many sales organizations struggle to create relevance with their future customers. And so what I mean by that is, if you're a company that has, 200, 300, 500, 1,000 customers, all of the incoming sales reps are going to struggle to try to remember all of the different company names and, where they're located and so on. And so we have a proprietary algorithm that essentially surfaces the right company to mention. So, that in itself, creating relevance through referencing a company that may be located in the same location as the individual you're calling, or, a company that perhaps is in the same vertical. So, is in that technology profiler space, for example. So that's information that's surfaced for the account executive or the sales development rep, as well as the marketing team. And so, the prioritization of the accounts is then also something that's taken into consideration based on that customer concentration.
Right. And so back to sort of follow up the question I just asked, though, is so clearly see how the SDR, BDR would use this. So then once that account's transitioned to the account exec, let's say if we're in that particular type of sales model, what's the analyst doing for the account exec then as they start working through the remaining parts of the funnel?
Yeah, good question. So the other thing that we've noticed with sales organizations, and this was particularly evident with companies that we would talk to at Taudap, was that, this sort of concept of the single point of contact, single point of failure, whereby, a lot of sales reps will start engaging with someone. Perhaps it's a meeting that their SDR set up for them. And they're engaging with that individual, but they're not really speaking to anyone else in the organization. There are a lot of data aggregators out there that will provide contact information, but there's none today that will proactively recommend the right contacts to reach out to. So what we do within an account, we'll actually proactively recommend the right individuals based on the titles that have seemed to be successful for the customers that are customers. And that's a one-click for an account executive to create that contact and begin a dialogue with that individual over email. And so that's very powerful for account executive teams simply because it's pushing and recommending the right individual as opposed to, an account executive is probably not going to search on LinkedIn or, add the contact in Salesforce. Rather, they're going to continue to have a dialogue with the one person that's engaging. So that's an area, just as an example, where, Node provides value for the account executive team.
Yeah, interesting. So as I hear you talk about this, and as I extract little tidbits from you on this, is that it seems like, well, oftentimes in these types of environments, we have the great intelligence that starts coming out is that the weak link in the chain, unfortunately, is still the sales rep. So you may provide this prodding, you may provide this messaging, but at that point, then things start getting lost in translation. So what are you doing in terms of being able to help, make this, and support this transition that we're seeing across, and certainly in account-based selling, is really have to elevate the skills, the acumen, the expertise of the account execs to be able to deliver something of value to the buyer?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, at its core, we're really not focused on the workflow. So once someone's engaged around what the right messaging is, how to continue that dialogue with someone in terms of emailing them or calling them, that's not an area that we're focused on. Rather, I would say, looking at the core level, it's providing the marketing and sales organization with those right accounts and the right individuals. So starting with data at sort of the core. Mm-hmm. The workflow, that's an area where, it sounds like you've got a lot of familiarity there. It's definitely an area that is ripe for consolidation. I think, calling.
Yeah, I think that's an understatement. Yeah.
There are an enormous number of platforms and point solutions that are focused on that area. That's just not an area we're focused on today.
Okay, cool. Well, very good. Well, thank you very much on that. We're going to move to the last segment of the show. I've got some standard questions I ask all my guests.
Yeah.
And the first one is a hypothetical scenario I pose that you have been, but not in the same scenario, but you're hired as a new sales leader at a company whose sales have slowed down quite a bit, starting to stall out, and you've been brought in by the board and by management to turn things around. So to help this company get unstuck, what would be the two things you'd do the first week on the job that would have the biggest impact?
Yeah, so number one, I would meet with every single person on the sales and marketing organization to better understand sort of their strengths, their weaknesses, and also their perspective on where the business stands today, and how I can help them and sort of empower their growth, because in reality, I'm only one person. So striving to make sure they're successful in many respects is more important than looking at my own success. So that would be number one. Number two would be actually diving into who who are the customers. So connecting with the customer success team, also diving into the data around the companies that we have as customers. Because in reality, there's a lot of literature around firing customers. I'd like to understand who are the customers that we should be focused on. So, who are the companies that are paying us a lot of money or are very happy, have renewed, and so on. And then also look at the companies that are perhaps not good customers, right? So understanding that would arm me with both, the empowerment of the people that are on the team, as well as, finding and surfacing those companies that are sort of meeting that criteria of an ideal customer.
Okay, good answer. So some rapid fire questions. You can give me one-word answers or elaborate if you wish. And the first one is, when you, Daniel, are out selling, what's your most powerful sales attribute?
I would summarize it in one word, and that is insight.
Okay. Who's your sales role model?
Mark Cranny from Andreessen Horowitz.
What's one book that every salesperson should read?
Give and Take by Adam Grant.
What music's on your playlist right now?
That's a good question. It's on a shuffle playlist. So I am a frequent shuffler on SoundCloud.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't give you the last song that I listened to. Pretty broad array.
Well, let's choose one song. If you had one song to listen to right now, what would it be?
M83 just came out with a great hit. They're a French band that I've followed for quite some time. They just had a new hit called Go.
M83. Okay. You got me on that one. I don't follow French bands. Okay. All right. Good. I'm going to have to look that one up, learn something new. All right. So last question for you is, what's the one question you get asked most frequently by salespeople?
Generally, it's how do I find the next customer, or what would you do to increase my win rate?
And the answer is? Choose either one of those questions. There were two there, but
yeah, I did give you two.
Choose one.
Yeah, use your time wisely and focus on conversations that will convert.
All right, good. Well, Daniel, thank you very much for joining me. So, how can people find out more about you and Node?
Yeah, so you can reach me on email. It's daniel@node.io. I'm also on Twitter. I have an unusual Twitter handle based on my time in Japan, which is Gaijin Dan, Gaijin Dan. If you're curious, it means foreign person. I was a foreign person in Japan, and I remain a foreign person.
Oh, yes. I lived there myself as well. Yeah, so I was Gaijin as well.
Yep. So, find me on Twitter, and then, of course, on LinkedIn, just, Daniel@Node.
Well, great. Well, Daniel, thank you very much.
Beautiful. Thanks,
and remember, friends, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. And an easy way to do that is to make this podcast, Accelerate, a part of your daily routine, whether it's on your commute, in the gym, or make it part of your morning sales meeting. You'll make sure you don't miss any of my conversations with top business experts like my guest today, Daniel Barber, who shared his expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining me, and until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.